Neurological Disorders Lesson 2.4, How do our neurons transport the materials they need? The goals of this lesson are to introduce another key function of neurons, neuronal transport, and to connect neuronal transport to neuronal functions previously described, including receiving and transmitting information and communicating information to the postsynaptic cell. At the end of this lesson, students should be able to describe how neurons transport materials to their proper destinations, name the two primary motor proteins found in neurons, kinesin and dynein, and describe the role of kinesin and dynein. We'll achieve these goals by sorting functional components into neuronal structures, ordering the steps of axonal transport, and watching and discussing a video. To prepare for this lesson, you'll need to review the key scientific concepts that were presented in it. They include that the neuronal compartments contain components required to complete their function. For example, that the axon has ion channels. The process of axonal transport, including the microtubules, provide directional tracks, and that motor proteins move vesicles along these tracks, as well as the specificity of motor proteins. That kinesin moves materials from the cell body to the synapse, and the dynein moves materials from the synapse to the cell body. And lastly, the energy demands of axonal transport. You can review the scientific content in the background reading provided to you in the teacher primer, the teacher manual, and the student workbook. The teacher primer provides in-depth knowledge about the scientific content presented in the lesson. The teacher manual or lesson plan provides a minute-by-minute explanation of lesson structure, including instructions on how to manage the discussion and activity. And the student workbook provides additional explanation for your students. You'll need to be sure to print the lesson worksheet for your students. You'll also need to double check that the embedded video on PowerPoint slide 11 will play from your classroom computer. If you do have problems playing the video within the PowerPoint slide, you can download it from the ND Multimedia Backup. A link to this backup is provided to you on the webpage for Lesson 2.4. The key point of the lesson's due now is to show that neuronal compartments, the dendrites, cell body, and axon, contain the required components to perform their function. For example, the dendrites that need to receive signals contain receptor proteins, ion channels, and growth factors. The cell body, which needs to maintain cell life, contains the nucleus, mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, and ER. And the axon, which needs to send signals electrically, contains ion channels and mitochondria. We get there by sorting components into neuronal compartments. In the do now, students complete part 1 of their lesson worksheets. The worksheet lists several functional components, mitochondria, growth factors, synaptic vesicles, and has students sort them into neuronal structures, dendrite, cell body, axon, in which they likely be found. After giving the students a few minutes to complete this section of the worksheet, you'll use PowerPoint slides 3 through 7 to review the do now and sort each of the functional components into their proper neuronal compartment. Note, some of the components end up in more than one place. For example, mitochondria are found both in the cell body and the axon. Here you'll focus on the fact that each compartment is filled with components needed to complete the compartment's function. The key points of the discussion and activity are to explore the process of axonal transport, including that microtubules provide directional tracks along which transport flows, and that motor proteins move vesicles along these microtubule tracks. Additionally, we'll discuss the specificity of our motor proteins. The kinesin carries cargo from the cell body to the synapse, and the dynein carries cargo from the synapse to the cell body. We'll get to these key points by ordering the steps of axonal transport and watching and discussing a video showing axonal transport. First, you'll show students that we can represent a neuron with this pink, almost light bulb shape. We use this representation since it widens the axon to allow us to diagram axonal transport. Then you'll have students complete part 2 of their worksheets, which has them match the numbers of the diagram to a description of steps of axonal transport. After giving students a few minutes to complete that, you'll use slide 9 to review those steps. This slide is animated so you can display the steps as the discussion progresses. Axonal transport relies on microtubule tracks, which are likely a new cellular component for your students, so you use this slide to further introduce them to your students, including how they're oriented within our neurons, with plus ends being toward the synapse and minus ends being toward the cell bodies. Then you'll watch the video embedded on slide 11. The video was created by scientists who wanted to study how vesicles move in axons. The goal is to have students, like the scientists, analyze the video to make observations about how vesicles move, including which direction do the vesicles go? Can the same vesicle move in both directions? And do all vesicles move at the same time and speed? After watching the video and discussing student observations, you'll use slide 12 to discuss what the scientists noticed about vesicular transport. You'll then ask the students how might transport work and focus on the idea that vesicles must be motorized to allow them to move. Then you'll use slide 14 to introduce the motor proteins that move vesicles along the microtubule tracts, kinesin and dynein. After discussing the motor proteins, you'll have students complete part 3 of their worksheets, which has them apply their knowledge of how components get to the different neuronal compartments to determine the transport mechanism of 5 different components. You'll review this exercise in the wrap-up. The key points of the wrap-up are to review the process of axonal transport, specifically that components moving from the cell body to the synapse move toward the plus end of microtubule tracts and are carried by kinesin. Additionally, components that are moving from the synapse to the cell body move toward the minus end of the microtubule tracts and are carried by dynein. We'll get to this key point by reviewing the worksheet activity. In the wrap-up, you'll review part 3 of the lesson worksheet, in which students needed to apply their knowledge of how components get to different neuronal compartments. The key points here were: where does the component need to go? What direction will it travel on the microtubule tracts? And then which motor protein will it use? You'll use slides 16 through 21 to review this worksheet and answer those key questions for each of the 5 components students needed to sort. The key point of the homework is that energy demands of axonal transport are large. We'll get there by calculating the energy requirements for axonal transport. This lesson is fairly straightforward. That said, one of the most common questions teachers get is how do kinesin and dynein know which vesicles to move, which is something scientists are still figuring out, but it appears that different vesicles get tagged with markers, almost like an address that either kinesin or dynein recognize and bind to. At the end of this lesson, students should appreciate the need for a fast transport system within our neuron. Our neurons are our body's most complex cells with highly specialized structures, each needing different components to complete their function. Students should also be able to describe the axonal transport system, including the reliance on microtubules and motor proteins. Understanding axonal transport explains the causes and symptoms of some of the disorders that we'll discuss in the next lesson. Additionally, proper axonal transport is required for all of the previously discussed neuronal functions, so this builds on the concepts already discussed, including receiving and transmitting information and commuting information to a postsynaptic cell. And don't forget, if you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, to let us know. You can contact any of the CTSE team members, and we'd be more than happy to help you.